Hey guys, I'm Mustached here, aka Mustache Tom, here to review Primal Rage. So I'm trying to do a little bit of movie catch up. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to review every single movie and be able to catch up. Um, I might not review every popular movie, but I do want to try to check out some of these smaller movies. Um, Again, that is a big part of my channel, always giving new things a chance. So here we go. Even though the movie's name is technically Primal Rage, which, for those of you who don't know, is technically a name of a video game. Though this, by the looks of it and by what I saw, this is not a video game movie. So we start off with this Jeep, and inside the Jeep is this lady named Ashley, or just Ash. So she's heading up to the woods, and along the way, she picks up this guy named Max, who just got out of prison, and these two are, I guess, already divorced, but they are going to see their son. In the meanwhile, they switch the radio back and forth, and then they stop the Jeep to make out, and then have some sex. And afterwards, they decide to go to a gas station. So some hunters mock Max for being an ex-convict. Uh, and when he returns, they talk about how he's scared. And they continue traveling along the road until they hit a body. They go to check it out, and they call it in. And then from out of the woods or the forest, rocks are thrown at Max, who temporarily hides and then gets hit by one of them, making him fall back into the water. So Ash has to dive down to get him. They go further downstream. She's able to get him out and get him out alive, and they both are able to rest up. They warm each other up, and we see that through those rocks is a giant ape-like creature, and it comes out and drags the dead body away. Thus, we cut to plot B of the movie, which is a sheriff and his deputy talking shit to each other. The deputy does the smoking stuff because he's part of like an ancient tribe or whatever. The sheriff is like, he doesn't want to deal with any of that, and so on and so forth. So they go have their little back and forth. Meanwhile, back with Max and Ash, they warm up, and so on and so forth. And we cut back to the sheriff, and then he's checking out the scene where the vehicle was, seeing the markings of the vehicle, and the deputy is called over to help out. We cut back, and Max is now talking about what he learned from prison, how to make a shank and all that stuff. It doesn't really lead up to anything, by the way. Just, whatever. And we cut back to the sheriff, who, after seeing the results of what's going on, he starts to think that it's Max's fault, because he's the ex-convict, when he's shown a picture of Ash. So Ash dreams of the dead guy that they ran over, and she's given his shirt when hers goes missing, but she doesn't have any pants. He does. And so they decide to follow back upstream but the terrain in that area is far too intense for them, so I guess they decide to head deeper into the forest. And the ape continues to look on from a distance. And as you can probably kind of tell from this poster, the ape has some sort of mask on its head, like a wooden type of mask. Anyway, the two of them, being Max and Ash and Max, start to hear some camaraderie, only to see that it's the hunters again. So Max approaches them. They start to give him shit. He tries to just ask for the radio. And then while that's going on, the ape is temporarily behind Ash, taking some of her hair without her noticing somehow, only until after it's gone. So she joins them, kind of getting freaked out. And they just join the hunters as they move along. We cut back to the sheriff, who's seeing the claw marks because they found the vehicle somehow. And then we cut back to Ash and Max, who follow the hunter group once again, further and further into the area. One of them brings up how the radio might just be working, and then when that happens, he splits off, leading to two more of his men of this main hunter splitting off. So one of them, named Critter, is shot with an arrow and dies, and the man who initially ran sees this but gets shot immediately before he can do anything, and then rips off his eyes too, so the movie does have an extreme gory factor to it. The third man that went to go give them is calling around. He sees one of the dead bodies and begins to flee. He falls eventually and breaks his arm. And the ape pulls out an axe and cuts the third man down completely. So the hunting party admits that they were obviously getting ready for a hunt. And while the group is yelling at Ash and Max and they're yelling back, one of them gets shot from a distance right out in front of the rest of the group. So they all pull out their guns, and one of them, named Frank, starts firing off when he sees the ape. So they're freaking out because everyone else is just trying to avoid getting shot, and Frank is going crazy trying to hit this thing. Ash hides away, even away from Max for whatever reason, whatever smart reason that was, but regardless, Frank does shoot down one of his men attempting to shoot the ape, and he happens to run out of bullets, and then the ape runs through, slits the guy's throat, and then runs off. So then Ash sees the masked ape and then has to run and hide. She joins up one of the other hunters who ended up running as well, and his head ends up being grabbed. And this is probably the most gruesome of the deaths, or, because his mouth is split open kind of like Joker style, and his jaw is just like flapping down after this sort of mouth opening. After Ash sees this, she flees some more, and then the ape trips her up with an arrow. Uh, so he tries to get her and then gets her. He does eventually get her. And then we see the man whose face is essentially ripped off keep crawling around. He's still like, rah, 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 something like that. And then Ape comes back to get him, smashing his head down with its foot. The ape messes around with Max a bit, seeing her react. The creature lets Max live. So the main hunter sees it and then shoots the ape, actually hits it. And the ape knocks him out and then drags him and Ash into its cave. Meanwhile, we haven't cut back to the sheriff in a minute. So him and the deputy go to the office, or this house, I should say, and then the hut next to it. Meanwhile, a witch-like creature helps Max out for whatever reason, and we come back to Deputy at the hut. And it's kind of like a back and forth, going back to Max, getting brought to this own hut where the witch kind of, again, is still cleaning him up. Then we cut to Ash, because she's in a completely separate area, who wakes up chained in a cave. The hunter wakes up too, but then the ape stabs him to death. And then we cut to the witch, who's doing this ritual thingy with Max, and then we cut to Sheriff, who's also partaking in his own ritual of spiritual finding or whatever. So the ape-like creature tries to mend his gunshot wound. He does a pretty good job. I think this movie had a lot of Predator in mind when it was being made, because that reminded me of the scene from, I believe that was in Predator 2. In fact, I think a lot of what happens at the end also is from Predator 2 as well. Anyway, so that happens. Meanwhile, the sheriff is getting a vision. The witch is going on about the Max's wounds. And then the sheriff finishes his ritual. So the ape gets behind Ash, and then, based off of what was happening, I assume it does the rape. I don't know if that would count as bestiality as well, but whatever. Anyway. So, anyways, somehow, some way, the sheriff ends up where Max is. I don't know how that happened. He just sort of teleports there? Question mark. So he talks about Max, and he suddenly knows that the creature is named Oma. So they prep up, covering their scent, which doesn't lead to anything, by the way. Even their guns. Because apparently the gunpowder can be smelled by this Oma. So Ash is fed by the creature, the Oma. And meanwhile, Max and Sheriff get prepped up. And he sees the old witch lady's there, and then he just sort of moves on with the sheriff, who preps a hidden gun. So Ash bumps the ape, or Oma, back when it tries to, comfort her? I don't know if it was, trying to go at it again or whatever, but whatever. Anyways, Oma gets ready to battle. So it goes out, and as soon as it does, Ash gets, is able to get herself out and get some pants and a shirt and a gun and leaves. And Max and the sheriff set out as well. So the sheriff goes on ahead for whatever reason, splitting off from Max. Dumb being dumb, pulls out his gun. The Oma finds him, and the sheriff is able to shoot the Oma a bit before he takes out the sheriff. So Ash finds this going on. She tries to shoot, but she's not good at all, missing every single one of her shots. But as the Oma runs, she sees that there is blood left behind from when the sheriff didn't shoot it, so she's following those tracks. Meanwhile, Max also finds the dead sheriff, takes his gun, and then meets Ash. And then they both hear it, and Ash wants to move forward. And Max kind of goes in a different direction. Again, splitting up. So Ash shoots it a bit, apparently, some more, and then meets back up with Max, and then Max says that he wants to be the one to stay behind. So Ash eventually does leave, leaving Max to lead the Oma away, and then shooting it some more. He tries to run even further. He throws his little axe that he had, and he misses. The Oma misses with his spear, but he manages to smack Max into the mud. Max is now tossed around by the Oma. The Oma picks Max up. Max stabs Oma with a small dagger and runs some more, but then gets caught in a bear trap. The Oma decides to taunt Max by pulling on the trap, which allows Max to get out. Max comes in close, stabbing the Oma over and over again, and then smashing a rock on its head over and over again. So we cut back to Ash, who manages to get back to a road. And she just sort of starts traveling. We cut back to Max for our final scene where he gets shot by 2 arrows and he dies. Only to reveal that coming out of the forest are 3 more Omas, apparently. Again, very akin to the end of Predator 2, except they actually do kill the character that kind of stays behind this time. And thus, that is the end of Primal Rage. There's a lot of cutting back and forth. The acting is kind of blah. The characters are very simplistic. The ex-convict thing is just sort of there. And it doesn't really lead anywhere as far as in terms of him really doing anything in that regard. Like making an actual shank, because I don't think he actually made that himself. The sheriff popping in on him somehow, things like that. And this movie did feel like it was supposed to be more of Max's movie, but then she just sort of runs off, which is kind of weird in a way, I guess. And it is sort of a moral loss for her, because again, what happened to her earlier in the movie. So, I don't know. It does have some interesting gore and blood aspects to it, so I will give it that again. I think that's the only highlight of the movie, actually, to be honest. So, based off of that, I'm gonna give this movie a 2 out of 10. It's not really that great. The 2's for the good looking gore. So that is my review of Primal Rage, and if you enjoyed this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out that link in the description, and I'll head you over to my Patreon page, and any donation is greatly appreciated. Until next time, everyone, bye-bye!